What more can I do but just ask? Governor Whitmer, please give him that chance.
Demetrius Terrence Frazier was born on October 29, 1972, and became a figure of national attention when Alabama carried out his execution by nitrogen hypoxia on February 6, 2025. Frazier had long been condemned for a brutal crime committed in 1991, the rape and murder of 41-year-old Pauline Brown in Birmingham, Alabama. The state's decision to carry out his death sentence by a relatively new and deeply contested method, nitrogen hypoxia, made his case a flashpoint in debates over capital punishment, constitutional limits, and experimental execution protocols. The crime for which Frazier was sentenced to death had shocked Alabama in the early 1990s. Prosecutors contended that Frazier broke into Brown's apartment, raped her, and then shot her in the head, later returning to rummage for money and using her home as though it were a crime scene. The jury recommended death, and the sentence was affirmed, making him a condemned man for over 3 decades. Intriguingly, Frazier also had deep ties to another violent act. In Michigan, he had been serving a life sentence for the 1992 murder of 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick. In 2011, the Michigan authorities transferred him to Alabama so that he could face the penalty for the Brown killing. From the outset, Frazier's execution raised legal, ethical, and constitutional challenges. Alabama is among a small number of U.S. states that have authorized nitrogen hypoxia as an alternative to lethal injection. But the method remains little tested and hotly contested. Frazier's attorneys requested a federal court injunction to block his execution unless the state revised its protocol, for instance, by administering a sedative before the gas flow, on the grounds that previous nitrogen executions had exhibited signs of forcible suffocation and involuntary movements.
Carol Frazier and anti-death penalty advocates delivered a letter and a petition to the governor's office imploring her to intervene in Demetrius Frazier's case. But for their part, advocates did not dispute Frazier's guilt.
Demetrius Frazier is not innocent. He was convicted of some horrific crimes. We do not deny that. We do not in any way diminish that.
Frazier has a long rap sheet. Now in his 50s, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison in Michigan for felony murder and criminal sexual conduct back in 1993. He was later convicted of the rape and murder of a woman in Alabama 3 years later, and he faces the death penalty there.
But a judge denied that request, ruling that Frazier had not met the legal standard needed to show that the protocol created a substantial risk of serious psychological pain, prohibited by the Eighth Amendment. Thus, the state proceeded with the execution. On the evening of February 6, 2025, Frazier was led to the execution chamber at the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama. According to the Alabama Department of Corrections, his death was officially pronounced at 6:36 p.m. after the nitrogen gas had been administered. Media witnesses reported visible distress. Frazier shook, twitched, and appeared to struggle to breathe in the first minutes after the gas began flowing. Observers noted that at one point he lifted his legs and his body convulsed, a pattern seen also in earlier nitrogen executions. While the state posited that these were involuntary reflexive movements, opponents argue such behavior is consistent with conscious suffocation, raising serious questions about whether the prisoner experienced terror or pain. In his final statement, Frazier apologized to the family and friends of Pauline Brown, saying, "What happened to Pauline Brown should have never happened." He also expressed regret to the black community and directed criticism at Michigan's governor, Gretchen Whitmer, for declining to intervene and bring him home to Michigan, a state without the death penalty. Reportedly, he closed with Detroit strong, "I love everybody on death row, and let's go." Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall issued a terse statement labeling Frazier a monster whose violent actions merited the punishment, and suggesting that the execution would bring closure to Brown's family. By executing Frazier, Alabama had carried out its 4th death by nitrogen hypoxia, a method still novel and deeply controversial. The use of nitrogen hypoxia has been especially criticized because the data set is small and witnesses to earlier executions reported signs of distress, leaving open the question of whether the method is ever truly humane. Civil rights organizations like the Equal Justice Initiative condemned the execution as proceeding, despite serious questions about the reliability of his death sentence and the ethics of using an experimental approach. Indeed, Frazier's case stands at the intersection of several fraught issues: the limits of capital punishment, the constitutionality of execution methods, the capacity for remorse and apology, and the weight of decades-long legal limbo. In the end, Demetrius Terrence Frazier's execution underscored that the death penalty in America remains an arena of moral, legal, and procedural conflict. His life embodied multiple tragedies, both for his victims and for a system grappling with how to administer death at all. And his death may become a pivotal reference point in future challenges to nitrogen hypoxia, in debates about state power, cruelty, and the meaning of justice in a society that still kills in its name. We extend our deepest condolences to the families of Pauline Brown and Crystal Kendrick. Our hearts go out to you during this time of sorrow. May you find comfort in the cherished memories you hold and in the love and prayers of those surrounding you. Pauline and Crystal touched the lives of many, and their kindness, strength, and spirit will continue to live on in all who knew them. We pray that God grants you peace that surpasses understanding and the strength to face each new day with hope and grace. Please know that you are not alone in your grief. Our thoughts and prayers are with you today and in the difficult days ahead.